Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get started. Just firstly, thank you for coming. For those who don't know me, I'm Matt Townend. I'm the Executive Director of the Cavell Group, and I'm going to be doing the first keynote. So before maybe we get started into the content, I just wanted to talk about why we thought it was a good time to do this event. It's really around, we're in unprecedented times for the industry. We're seeing value chains being completely reinvented. We're seeing huge interest from investors and service providers and vendors as they look to consolidate and grow for scale. And within all of that, we've got COVID and the enterprise reinventing the way they communicate. So I had this idea that it would be a good time to bring both those communities together with the support of Q Advisors, our partners, and a sponsor, Acuity, who are working very closely with Q as well now. So that was really why we did it. I guess we should start by just introducing the platform and giving you an idea of what you can and can't do. So we're using the Hop-In platform. Some of you may be aware of it. It's a fairly recent platform. I think it was launched in 2019. And we really like it because it's very focused on interaction and networking. And those of you who've been to our events physically before will know that's important. So there's a few features you should be aware of. If you're hearing me speak, you found out where the sessions are. So when you want to enter a session, you just click on that session. It will ask you if you want to share video. The answer to that is no. That is really just for the speakers. There will be an opportunity towards the end to ask questions, and also you'll get a chance to visit some of the speakers in the what's called the expo area in our stand later. So if you've got some specific questions, want to catch up, talk about a specific issue, we can do it there. Also, things you should be aware of, you'll see there's a networking area. So at the end of this sessions today, we're going to have a networking session. For those who've been on speed dating, I haven't personally, but if you've been speed dating, it's very similar to that. So every 5 minutes, you'll start, if you place yourself in there, you'll meet another person, another member of the group, and that I should turn off my phone, and that will be an opportunity to network with people. Also, during the session, you'll see the tab that says People, and on the People tab, you can make contact with people you may know, so you can see everybody on there. If you want to chat with them, go into the People, you can chat, and you can even go and have a video session with them. So if there's somebody you want to talk to, meet, look in the People side. If somebody is trying to chat with you, you'll see a red dot appear in your People section, and you can go and choose to decide if you want to have a chat with them or not. So that's kind of how the platform works. The main chat area is really just for the event and the session. So they're broad-based chat. And also there's some polls which we're going to be just running throughout the day out of interest. If you want to take part in those, go and have a look and enter your thoughts, and everybody better see the results. So I think that's really the platform. I hope you find it good to use. Just one quick intro on Cavell. A number of you will know us, but there may be some people on the call who don't know us. So our focus really is around practical advice, research, and consulting to both the finance and service provider vendor community. We are really best known for our analyst services, for our research, but on top of that, very well known for our practical consulting. So it's the combination of those two pieces of capability that brings us our kind of difference, which we then bring into our diligence work. So it's that combination of the analyst and consulting expertise that helps us with our diligence. And obviously you'll now know we do events because you're at one of our events. Our main areas are focused around the whole cloud communications, cloud networking, and then we get involved in some of the other more established technologies around mobile, on-premise telecoms, etc. So that's really who we are. The key trends that I wanted to focus first on what the key trends that are driving the investment, driving investment are, and why there's so much interest. We're going to go through each of these in turn, but clearly strong market growth. So we're going to show you some of the figures and the growth of the market. And we can't get away from the COVID has completely changed the way that people are working, which is really impacting the market and impacting the opportunity in this space. We are seeing mega cloud competition emerging, and that's both driving opportunity and challenge. And we're seeing, as a result of that, a race for scale. So we're seeing consolidation really at every level. So we're seeing vendor consolidation, service provider consolidation, and channel consolidation. So there's a race, as you'll see as we go through this presentation, for scale within that. We're also seeing some emerging areas of value, and those around things like customer engagement. So how enterprises are engaging with their customers. We've seen a lot of value around that, obviously around collaboration and around areas like cloud networking. They're the areas where we're seeing value. So in terms of market growth, those who aren't that aware of the market, these are just a couple of snapshots from some of our research. The diagram on the left really defines the penetration and the strength of penetration of cloud-based communication services. Now, you can see from that the Netherlands and the UK have had the most penetration, with some of the markets alongside of those. But we're talking about penetration rates of upwards to 20%. So there's still a lot of market to go after. And on the right, you'll see what we expect to happen in Europe, which is really a doubling of the total market in the next 5 years. And that is probably being accelerated even faster by COVID. So this was pre-COVID figures. So the news on the market for the cloud communications market is established market, penetrated quite strongly in some markets, but still a lot of growth to go in a number of geographic markets, and very different by region. In terms of the US, we'd be similar to the UK and Netherlands in terms of its maturity and penetration. So these figures are European figures, but if we look at what's happened as a result of COVID, and one of my analysts, who, if you want to meet, will be in our booth later, Patrick, described what happened was like when somebody breaks into your kitchen and you choose whichever weapon is closest to you first to defend yourself. So it might, unfortunately, end up being a whisk or something, not the carving knife you required. So what we've seen is we have seen that customers have reached initially for what was often closest to them. So you will see a large growth, for instance, in VPN extensions and remote extensions to traditional PBX solutions. We did see a growth, and we are seeing a growth clearly in people taking cloud communications. There was an immediate uplift of 29% on the orders within March. What we have also seen is a kind of reflection. So people have reached what they wanted, and then they've reflected on what the solution was. So they're now thinking more maybe about security, about integration, about some of the other issues that they may also be thinking about. So we expect in the next few months that the market and enterprises to go through a reflection of what the best solution is moving forward. One practical thing I didn't mention at the beginning, if you can't see the slides very well, you can double click on them and that will expand them. Also, if your screen is a bit small, you can click up on the left and close the people bar, which will make the slides a little bigger. So the other news, which is no surprise if you watch the TV at all, is the growth of collaboration and video. So Microsoft Teams now is at, the latest was 75 million daily active users. And obviously that is across the world and also includes includes free, all different types of subscriptions. Just for a reference, the biggest markets for that are in the US and the UK, representing about 9% of Microsoft Teams users. So not a clear penetration everywhere globally. There's still very much there's still a feeling that it's quite focused on certain markets. Zoom, I could have put up a number of figures about Zoom and the growth of Zoom. One of the things that we found interesting was really the year-on-year growth in enterprises with more than 10 employees. So in their last figures, they showed that they had 265,000 proper, business users with over 10 employees, sort of 354%, can we believe, year-over-year growth. Obviously, Cisco has also benefited from this growth with its WebEx Teams product. They stated that there are over 500 million meeting attendees, 3 times what the figures they had in January. So we've seen a rush and an adoption of video and collaboration, and the Google Meet platform, which they launched, adding more than 2 million users. So there's been this huge growth, not surprisingly, in video and collaboration. The other thing that's clearly happened is that COVID has broken the dam of remote working. So we have been, as you'll see, we've been looking at remote working in our research now for quite a while. We did some enterprise research this time last year, and we're actually just going into doing our next round of global enterprise research. But in our last enterprise research, so this is based on August and September last year, we could see that remote working was already driving behavior. And you could see here the adoption of team collaboration, the adoption of video at that point, and very interesting, the adoption of project management tools and document sharing. So what we'd already seen was a move towards remote working, which was driving collaboration as well, and a broad adoption of collaboration tools. But as you can see, different uses depending on size. So one person's collaboration isn't the same as another person's in terms of size of enterprise, what tools they may collaborate with. And when we ask what tools they're going to use more, things like project management comes up very high. So we're seeing the likes of Trello, Monday, those sorts of services becoming really important in collaboration. So this was the picture, in last summer. And then when we look at the impact of COVID in the last, since the COVID, we did a survey of service providers. We could see some huge increases on what we'd seen previously. So these were figures from service providers who said we had more than 50% increase in these things. So these are about 65 service providers across the world said they had more than 62% of them said they had more than 50% increase in team collaboration usage, more than 57% growth in audio conferencing, 73% growth in video conferencing. And what we have to realize is that is often on based on a picture where these services weren't often used. So if you look in some of the markets, the less developed markets, the solutions that had been offered were really just basic communications cloud services, so taking the PBX to cloud. But what we're now seeing is those service providers reporting large uptake in those traditional services. There's also some interesting stats around on how voice usage changed in terms of people now where they do using voice, using it for a lot longer duration calls, probably reflecting the fact that they're working from home. I just picked on the quote from Microsoft's CEO, but it's a reflection we're having from a lot of service providers and enterprises, that some of them are using this opportunity to really drive through digital transformation, and they're having to. So we're hearing stories that I heard of a retailer who during this lockdown period was completely changing the networking and networking solutions in all their stores, completely changing their whole point of using this opportunity to refit their whole estate. And obviously lots of companies are looking at doing that. One of the things that was kind of interesting that I hadn't really realized, and I should have really, working in the telephony industry, was the impact this might have on the usage of different devices. So clearly, a reseller we had said, you're hardly going to have a phone that's used by multiple people in a common area at the moment, because can you imagine, you know, a phone that you're going to put the handset to your head and face that's in a common area where everybody can use it? You'd have to be wiping it down every second. So what we've seen is maybe more people looking at using headsets for those environments. We did see a growth in handsets, particularly where people were taking them home to use them. So where you're in an environment, in an office environment where it's only you, so handset, you know, you're going to be the sole user, handset's still a very valid device. And one of the interesting things is a lot of people were looking to buy Ethernet, power over Ethernet adapters, because you know people in their home offices don't have power over Ethernet, and most modern phones now work on that. So we heard reports from vendors that they were suddenly selling IP phones which weren't power over Ethernet, which they probably had in the back of their stores for years. The other thing we saw that was interesting and is the companies that have won, the companies that have grown really fast, also had a very defined digital customer journey. You could order the service, you could interact online, and that goes for the service providers as well. So if you think of some of those names we talked about who grew very fast, they all had a defined digital journey. Now, we looked at service providers last year, and although 60% of service providers said that you could purchase their service online, it only represented less than 10% of sales. So I think this will refocus people around that digital customer journey. Now, I know we've got a lot of finance and PE firms on this call, so I wanted to talk about what's happening from a consolidation and deal perspective. So what we've really seen is a race for scale. Well, we've seen European consolidators, and the great news is you can meet a number of these people here today and you're going to hear from them during the sessions. So we've seen some notable companies who, you know, like Enreach, Destiny, Gamma, who've made a number of acquisitions to build out a European play, and Cavell, who's a very interesting company as well. We've seen people do national consolidation both in the US and in Europe. So obviously Vonage went through a phase with the help of Q, actually. Q Advisors, as a number of these guys did deals with Q, went through a period of buying up and going through a national consolidation process. And there's a number of names here of companies both around Europe who have also done some of that. And what we're seeing really interestingly now also is capability acquisition, particularly in the areas that I mentioned earlier. So the area of customer engagement, how can we improve our customer engagement? Maybe it's our contact center capabilities by acquisition. So there's been some very active companies in that space. You know, Cisco bought CloudCherry, which I found a very interesting acquisition. Obviously, new Vonage with New Voice Media. 8x8 have been doing a lot of activity in that space, and Ring. So a lot of people looking at particular capability acquisition as well. So I just put a few of what's happened in the last 6 months, just to give you some names and ideas. So we kind of, some of these deals are US, some of them are European. So we've seen continued consolidation on the service provider side, Next Vortex being purchased by BCM1. Gamma, who you may know in the UK, has bought VOZ and Exactive. Cavell, an interesting company, have bought 42.1, who's a German provider. Sorry, VOZ, I should mention, is a Spanish provider. So there's actually quite an interesting trend here. So we've seen quite a consolidation in the Spanish market because Gamma bought VOZ, Enreach bought MazVoz, and recently Air Networks bought LCRcom as well in Spain. and previously Cavell had bought a Spanish provider. So we're seeing constant expansion and internationalization by these providers. The Exactive purchase was more of a Microsoft skills-based purchase rather than an international purchase. Then on the vendor consolidation side, there's been a lot of activity, and we could spend a lot of time going through this. And as I say, if later you want to talk to me about any of it, I'll be in the booth after my sessions. But you know, Ribbon ECI, Enghouse Dialogic. I think I'd pick on two very interesting ones. Comcast purchasing Blueface, and you can hear from Alan later, who's on the session, and also Verizon buying Blue Jeans, and you can also hear from the founder of Blue Jeans as well on one of the sessions. Service providers buying capability, technical capability, quite interesting in terms of the raison d'etre. The other thing you'll see there is we're going to see some consolidation of the services around these capabilities. So Dubber buying another call control business called Calling. And probably the big news was Microsoft Metaswitch. Now, I could spend the next 20 minutes talking about the raison d'etre of that deal. I'm not going to. It'll probably come up on some of the sessions. If you want to find out more, you can go on online and access a free webinar we did on that and our feelings about that deal. Just go onto our site afterwards, our shop, and you'll see the ability to look at that. And obviously some really interesting PE investment coming in here with Cyrus buying TPX in the US and Apex taking investing heavily in Destiny. So a lot of activity. And I don't think it's the end of the activity. This is kind of the market map that I put together around this kind of cloud communication space. And, you know, there's lots of different providers of capability here. And we're seeing interesting deals now on partnerships. Probably the biggest one you've probably heard about was Ring Central partnering with Avaya. But, you know, we've seen relationships here you just wouldn't expect. You know, AWS and Salesforce, you know, some of those larger cloud platform providers working across that space. We then said there's two kind of growth areas you need to be aware of, and that was really around collaboration and customer engagement are the areas. We clearly can't get away from collaboration. So if you're in this space and you're looking to invest, or you're existing service provider, you need to have a story. But what's interesting is I don't believe everybody's collaboration is the same. So our research shows that different collaboration tools suit different types of customer. Different sizes of customer will collaborate in different ways. What they will want to do is integrate. So they will want to integrate into some of their own tools, some productivity tools. So it's not going to be, I don't think, a sole winner here, but it's going to be a job of integrating these things together and a role for a service provider to do that within what they offer and within what they offer within the comms stack. But it's certainly going to require a broader approach. And the other area that most people have been some of the people have been on these sessions before know I've been talking about this for a while, but I'm pretty passionate about, and I think we're starting to see it, about the importance of customer engagement. So the relationship between the enterprise and its customers, and how you can improve that is where there's lots of value. And traditionally we talk about contact center in that space. Clearly that has shown to be an important area. If you just saw 8x8's latest results, I think it was 8 out of their top 10 deals, or maybe even been 10, I could be wrong, involved both contact center and UCaaS together in the offer. So that relationship with customer experience is very important. And that means more focus on analytics, not only contact center, more right across the board, more focus on integration, all those elements. So I just wanted to share in our last few minutes, because I'm going to keep to time today because it's a virtual event, we've got to kind of keep moving. I just want to talk about our lessons from due diligence. So we've probably done I think probably about 10 deals last year in terms of where we were involved in the due diligence side, either technical, commercial, and sometimes beyond that in terms of market scanning, etc. I guess the first advice is, when is a cloud business a cloud business? So many businesses we've been asked to look at are cloud businesses, and you realize that like 10% of their revenue is really cloud. That's one of the first thing. And obviously it's quite hard to find a scaled pure cloud business. So what you have to do is realize that you're investing in a journey, and there'll be a strong cloud basis for this business, but I might have to come on a journey with them. And that means what's crucial in our due diligence is the customer migration planning. We always expect a clear platform strategy, and that's not to say that and we may disagree with other people on this call, that doesn't necessarily mean has to be their own platform, but we just want a clear platform strategy and how they add value around that platform, how they integrate with that platform. Quite often it makes sense to use a commercial platform in those cases, but you should be very aware of how you integrate into that and where you add value. One thing we find is a lack of documentation and process quite often. And on technical due diligence, we always come up against security, scalability, and regulatory compliance generically. And as I say, integration capabilities are crucial. So the other thing you saw from my first diagram is the channel approach differs widely by market. And Mike is going to talk later, Michael Quinn, also says he comes up quite a lot when they're doing their due diligence, and have these companies actually filed and paid their taxes? Sometimes he finds they haven't. And the other thing is, do these companies understand their differentiation? So these are some of the areas that we come across. To summarize, there is clear value and growth to be realized, and we're going to talk through that through the whole session. We've got some really interesting sessions going on today. Later today in the different sessions where you'll hear from lots of people. They've got to have a recognition, you've got to have a recognition of your role with mega cloud companies. Mega cloud companies are not significant in some of these markets, but we've got to understand how you fit with them. There should be a strong roadmap covering collaboration and customer engagement. And there has to be clarity on those customer journeys and migration plans. And we expect, when we're looking at businesses, that they have in-depth knowledge of customers and relevant segmentation and a holistic approach to working. And we think it's a time where you have to have scale, or you have to have routes to scale. So with that, I am going to now, you're all going to follow me. We're going to do the first leave and go to another session. So I am going to, so sorry, I've just seen some of the questions coming. I'm sorry if you haven't seen, I need to see, you need to see left Ruth. Sorry, I didn't see that because I was I was presenting. So we're now going to go off to the next session. So if we leave here and join the winners and losers, we're going to talk to some of the key people there. So leave here and go into that session.